And as we wait for that, here is what we know now. There were 3 explosions, 2 at the airport and a 3rd on a subway train not far from the headquarters of the European Union. Authorities believe at least one of the airport attacks was a suicide bombing, and police have reportedly found an unexploded suicide belt that suggests that there may be a suspect on the run, which I would point out is exactly what happened in the Paris attack. And Saleh Abdeslam was the person who let that suicide belt go. He is now in custody, so there may be someone who did the same thing who is out on the run as we speak. We have been hearing from the presidential candidates this morning. We expect to hear from the president momentarily. Presidential candidate John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, joins us now live on the phone. Governor, good morning to you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Your reaction to what we are seeing?
Well, clearly, our intelligence capability to cooperate around the world is really got great vulnerabilities, and I think what the president needs to do is to come home, to communicate with all the heads of state, to put together a team of people to examine our vulnerabilities, to develop a much deeper and closely coordinated intelligence operation, because the way you deal with this is obviously to make sure that you have the counterterrorism capability to be able to stop these kinds of unbelievable, with the murdering that has gone on here. And so we need much closer cooperation with people who share our values around the world, and the president needs to move quickly. He needs to assemble a group of people who can dig in and begin to rebuild the intelligence that we need worldwide. And of course, at some point here, we need to confront ISIS and we need to destroy them. So I see it as a kind of a twofold process. You put together the coalition to destroy ISIS and take the activity, the action, the comprehensive action, and secondly, of course, to rebuild the intelligence community worldwide.
We know that Saleh Abdeslam said that he and others had snuck in through the refugee process coming out of Syria. So that's one part of this problem in Europe. How would you deal with that?
Well, obviously, they need to screen. Here in the United States, we've pretty much agreed, except the president, the governors have agreed that we would not take any refugees from Syria, that it's impossible to vet them. And I think Europe opened up its doors without having a proper vetting process, but that's one of the things that needs to be reviewed and to figure out how they're going to act moving forward. They're trying to they've made an agreement with Turkey to try to stem the flow of these migrants, and this all goes back to basically the war in Syria, where we should have learned early on that we had the ability to topple Assad before the Russians involved themselves by supporting the rebels, which we did not do. We drew a red line. We didn't do that. We didn't create the no-fly zones, and this is the consequence of a lack of very strong and affirmative action. But we can't just look in the rearview mirror. We got to figure out what we're going to do going forward. I think the Europeans are trying to get a grip on the issue of the flow of refugees with this agreement with Turkey. But I think at the same time, obviously, the intelligence community is behind the 8 ball, and we need to get in front of this.
You say that you would deal with it in a twofold way, and that it all goes back to Syria. There's no concerted effort right now to take Raqqa back. Is that something that, if you were in the White House right now,
well, I think we should have a coalition of both the Arabs and the Westerners to destroy ISIS, both in Syria and Iraq. And now we have another opportunity to pull the world together to mount the effort that needs to be done, while at the same time we rebuild our intelligence.
Ted Cruz was just in front of the cameras moments ago. He said we're at war with radical Islam and that they have declared their intention to murder innocents. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, we've been really at war with Islam for a long time now. Radical Islam, not with Islam, but radical Islam. And so, look, we can use. Are we at war? Are we not at war? I believe there is a war being directed against the West. There's not only a war directed against the West, but a war being directed against all of civilized society. And that's why it's so vital that civilized society come together. We need to be calm, we need to be strong, we need to be smart, and we need to take care of business.
Do you believe that this problem is worse in Europe than it is here at home? And should we take any solace in that?
Well, there's no solace in it. Something's happening here, there, and it's not happening here. Look, I think the problem has been that they have not been effective at being able to do the kind of vetting that they need to do. And it gets down again to the problem of, do we know who these people are and where they are, and how do we act against them? In our country, we do have a well-funded counterterrorism operations in each of the states, or shared in some of the states. But it's a very effective organization. It stopped a number of attacks, many we would never hear of or read about. But the same kind of activity, both human intelligence on the ground, is what is the most effective kind of intelligence. And there's no solace because, when people in Europe die from the impact of suicide bombers, when they bleed, we bleed in America. We're all in this together. That's why we need to act together and have no light between us.
Very true. We expect to hear from the president in moments. What do you expect him to say?
Well, what I hope he'd say is that he's leaving Cuba. He's heading back to the White House. He's going to begin to organize meetings with the leaders around the world, and at the same time get himself in a position of where we can send teams of people immediately to Europe and begin to dig in terms of what we need to do to address the vulnerabilities we have.
We heard from Donald Trump earlier today. He said this redoubles the efforts to do what he said we need to do, which is to not allow any Muslims temporarily into the country and to end the visa waiver program. Your thoughts?
Well, in terms of the visa waiver program clearly needs to be examined, and I would hope that Congress would immediately begin to take a look at the visa waiver program. And in terms of the actions by Congress to say that we didn't want people from Syria and Iraq to be heading into the United States, I think is correct. And the Congress came together to put limits on that, and I think that's right. And I'm glad that the governors at least are standing united against the idea that we would allow more Syrian refugees in here when we don't have the capability to vet them. But Mr. Trump also said that he thought we should be downplaying our involvement in NATO, and I don't think that makes any sense at all. In fact, we need to be even stronger as an alliance.
Governor John Kasich, thank you very much, sir. Good to have you with us this morning.